Hello friends, welcome back to Digitalk. So in this session, I am going to show you how to create the load balancer in the AWS cloud. Okay, so why we use the load balancer to load balance the request to the backend application server. Okay, for example, in the backend we may have the multiple web servers or multiple application servers, and we would like to load balance the request between the multiple servers. Okay, and along with that, if you would like to offload the SSL, we don't want to configure the SSL at the application level, and we want to configure it at the DNS level. Okay, so for that we can use the hardware load balancer, and along with that, from the security perspective, we always have a hardware load balancer or the software load balancer in front of our web servers and application servers. Okay, so in AWS we have the option which is inside your EC2 dashboard. So this is your EC2 dashboard, and here if I scroll down inside the load balancing, we have the option called load balancers. Okay, so here we can create the load balancer, and we have a multiple kind of a load balancer. So I am going to create this session specifically for the application load balancer, okay, which we use mostly use for the redirection of HTTP and HTTPS traffic. That means the web traffic that we receive from the web browser, okay, or maybe from some the APIs or some other applications which support your HTTP and HTTPS. So we'll create the application load balancer, and for that we will create two EC2 instances machine where we will run two different web servers. Okay, and then we'll create the load balancer which is going to load balance the request between the two web servers. Right. So now before we jump into execution, let me explain you the architecture that we are going to implement here, which I am going to show you. Because when we create the load balancer, so that is completely depend on the kind of the backend application server that you have. That means in which availability zone and which subnet your backend instances are available. So based on that, when we configure the load balancer, we have to select the configurations. Okay. So let me quickly first show you the two different kind of architecture that we can create in terms of your load balancer configuration. Okay, the first thing, suppose that we have two virtual machines where our web servers are running, VM1 and VM2. Okay, so here our web servers are running where we would like to load balance the request. Right. Now, when we create the machines, okay, for we have the concept of availability zone. Okay, so availability zone is nothing but it is a data center in a particular region. Okay, so we have the liberty, we can create our resources in a single availability zone, or we can create in the multiple availability zone. So multiple availability zones always preferred because of the high availability. Because if any one of the availability zone goes down, okay, then the traffic will be served from the other availability zone. Now let's suppose that we have only one availability zone and both the virtual machines are inside the same availability zone. Okay, and in the same availability zone and in the same subnet, we have the same subnet here. Okay, so very first requirement for this virtual machines, okay, when we are configuring the with the load balancer, both should be in the public subnet. Okay, because it is going to receive the traffic from the outer world, so your virtual machine should be in the public subnet, right? So this subnet is our public subnet. Right. So now here we have the virtual machines in the same availability zone and in the same subnet. Okay. So when we configure the elastic load balancer, okay, or simply you can say the load balancer in the AWS. Okay, so during the configuration of load balancer, we get the option to select at least two availability zones. Okay, and why two availability zones? Because again for the high availability. Okay, but here if we go with this approach where our both of the virtual machines are in the same single availability zone, right, then there is no meaning of this second availability zone in the elastic load balancer. You can select the two availability zone, but there is no use of that one, right? Because our both of the virtual machines are inside the availability zone 1. This is 1, right? And inside the same subnet. So during the configuration of ELB, it asks for to select the availability zone. So you can select the primary where you have the both the virtual machines are exist. You can select the second one as well, but there is no use of that one because we do not have the resources there, right? And then we can select the subnet, right, for this corresponding availability zone, and this is the same subnet and same availability zone where we have our virtual machines. So this is the first architecture where we have the virtual machines in the same availability zone. Now, second is the highly available architecture that we configure most of the time. And how we configure it? Now, suppose that this is we have our virtual machine 1 and this is our virtual machine 2. So we have two virtual machines. Now, for high availability, we have configured both of the virtual machines in the different availability zones. Availability zone 1, availability zone 2, right? That means in the two different data centers. Now, because they are in two different data availability zones, so they will have a separate subnet. Subnet 1, subnet 2, right? Because the subnet cannot span across the availability zones because they are completely different data centers. So now we have two VM, both are in different availability zones and both belong to the different subnet. So now when you are going to configure the availability zone, okay, not the availability zone, when you are going to configure the elastic load balancer, okay, so during configuration it asks for to select the two different availability zone for high availability. So you can select the availability zone 1 and availability zone 2, right? Because you have virtual machines in the same availability zone 1 and availability zone 2, correct? And then you can select the corresponding subnet like subnet 1 here and subnet 2 here because it belong to the corresponding machines, right? And then inside that we have our virtual machines. We have VM1 here and we have VM2 here inside this particular availability zone and subnet and this availability zone and subnet. So now once the request will be received from the ELB, it will be distributed between two different availability zones, or you can say in two different data centers. So that is the reason it is always preferable, or always we go with the multiple availability zone configurations for the high availability, right? So in this architecture, what will happen if suppose that this availability zone is crashed or it is not responding due to any reason, okay, then your complete application will be down. And here, because the applications are in two availability zones, right? So in what will happen in that case, if one of the availability goes down, the request will be served from the other availability zone. So this is the single availability zone architecture and this is the multiple availability zone architecture, okay? So I am going to show you this particular architecture. So what I will do, let me tell you the action plan quickly, okay? What is the action plan that I am going to create? So I will create two virtual machines, VM1. This will be in some availability zone 1 and this will be part of subnet 1 and this will be our public subnet, right? Because this is going to get the traffic from the internet. Similarly, I will create second virtual machine which is in availability zone 2, which will belong to subnet 2 and this is again in the public subnet. So two VMs in two different availability zones and two different subnet, both will be the public subnet. Okay, so in AWS there is no specific option to mark a subnet public or private. Okay, whenever you open the traffic in a particular subnet from the internet, okay, this automatically declared as public. And how we open the internet traffic? We attach the internet gateway with this particular subnet. So when you attach the internet gateway, that means if you are seeing that a internet gateway is attached to your subnet in the routing table, then it is a public subnet. And if there is no internet gateway, it is a private subnet, right? So now I am going to create two virtual machines in two different availability zones. And what I will do after creation of the virtual machines, I will install the Apache web server. Okay, and in the first virtual machine, I will change the text or HTML page. And similarly, in the virtual machine 2, I will change the HTML page so that when we'll access from the browser, we'll get the two different HTML pages when we will hit it from the using the DNS of my load balancer. Okay, that will give you the picture that it is doing the proper load balancing between two virtual machines in two different availability zones and two different data centers. Right. So this is the net architecture that we are going to follow, and this is what we actually follow in the professional environment. So, so if you want to join our Digitalk, this AWS course, okay, so we have a very good course on the Udemy, okay, where we have multiple sessions on the AWS services, okay, and every session is with covering with the detailed theoretical sessions and along with the execution. So first you will understand what we are doing, what is the plan, how we execute, and then you will see the real-time executions. Okay, so I will share this URL of the course, okay, by the end of this session, or maybe in the next couple of sessions when we will cover this ELB. Otherwise, you can visit our website, which is digitalksystems.com, okay, digitalksystems.com, and here you will see the URL of this course along with the coupon code. Okay, so now we have done with the action plan, and hope you understand now what exactly we are going to perform here, right? So let us start with the first part. And what is the first part? Create two virtual machines, VM1 and VM2, install the Apache, and then we configure the ELB, and this ELB will configure to route the request between two different virtual machines. Okay, so this is the first part. In second part, I am going to show you the execution.